The James Show Podcast.
I don't like it when I have to come on this show and talk about on a regular basis how there's just random acts of violence that you and I just can't prepare for, can't see it coming, can't predict it, can't really stay safe from it. We have to go out in public and we have to share a common space. We have to share society with psychopaths. Now, that's something you've been doing your entire life, but are we getting more psychopaths than we used to? Because the numbers don't bear that out. I think we're just hearing about every single scary story because, I mean, we kind of force it. This is the stuff that we pass along. And when I say we, I mean you, I mean me. I'm guilty too. Garrett over there in the booth, he's guilty of it too. This is the stuff we pass around. We find it riveting. We find it, I don't want to, it's not titillating, but it definitely gets our attention. We have a negative cognitivity bias wherein our brain just naturally pays more attention to stories that are negative, that are threatening. And it makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint. You know, you want to pay attention to the things that can hurt you, that can kill you. Got it. But in a time like this where we have no natural predators and we're not walking around in the forest or the jungle having to watch out for constant attacks, it's making us neurotic. It's making us kind of crazy over here. Because I see a lot of people acting like this is something new, or I see a lot of people acting like this is getting out of control. Was it ever in control? Or were you just not as plugged into every crazy thing that happened? Because that's what when I go look at the numbers and how it bears out, we're actually a little bit safer than we were when we were kids. I have to remind Miss Parker of that on a regular basis because I'm a little more freewheeling, open style of parenting. I mean, we live out in the middle of nowhere, so the walk to the nearest gas station, it's not that far. And I don't mind if the kids go by themselves. Miss Parker does. And so this is sort of the constant struggle to where in other situations she'll gripe about how this, you know, these younger kids were raised like sissies with their participation trophies and their helicopter parents. And I have to say, who's a helicopter parent? Only the other person's a helicopter parent? You're not a helicopter parent when you're scared for the kids to walk to the gas station? So actually, I have to go do research and show that we're safer than we were in the 80s and 90s when our parents let us just run around all over town with no cell phone, with no idea where we're at. Just be home by what? By the time the sun goes down, if you live in the country. By the time the streetlights come on, if you live in the city. I know both of your worlds. So it's actually safer now. So it can feel like we have more of these psychos in these psychotic events. But if it makes you feel any better, we're actually a little bit safer than we were. But really, it's just not that different. And I don't think it'll ever be that different. I think we're always going to have about 2% of the population that's just born complete psychopaths, at least sociopaths. Sprinkle in a little childhood abuse and trauma, and they'll quickly become psychopaths. But we're never going to totally shut this down. So don't run around saying, well, we just better give up our guns, or we just better give up some of these other rights that we have. No. Don't fall for that one, because that one happens a lot. It's always, you're always trading safety. You're always trading your rights for a little bit of promised safety, the illusion of safety it's never going to come. You're still going to be in danger, maybe even more, and you won't have your rights. So let's just hold on to them here. But the one that's got the media's attention and probably your attention because it's all over social media is what happened yesterday with the 4 people killed, another mass shooting. This was intended for the NFL headquarters in New York City, but the guy went to the wrong floor and he ended up shooting some people at another business, and 4 dead. And then he turns the gun on himself, and he doesn't shoot himself in the head. He shoots himself in the chest, like Junior Seau did, probably for similar reasons. I haven't seen the note, but it's been reported that in the note he blames the NFL for his mental troubles. He has self-diagnosed as CTE, chronic encephalopathy. I said it correctly. Don't Google me. But that's the one where if you get banged in the head a bunch of times, a la playing football, then it drives you nuts after a while and deteriorates your mental health. And you can't really be diagnosed with that until after you're dead. And then they saw your brain open and they look at the damage that's been done to your brain, and they find these little lesions or whatever that are kind of scattered amongst your brain. And so that's what his theory is. Now, his entree into football matches a lot of ours. It was high school football. I played high school football. You play high school football? Did your husband play high school football? Probably so. Did we all get CTE? Definitely not. I don't think so. I know I'm not a good example of someone who's mentally stable and all together, but most of the people that I played football with are completely normal, fully adjusted adults. So I don't know if that's it. CTE? How do you distinguish that and just a regular psychopath? How do you distinguish between that and the guy in Idaho that killed 4 people and just got sentenced to 4 life sentences on last Friday's show? Remember we were talking about that crazy Idaho guy and what's his motive? And we didn't really come up with anything other than he's a psycho and he wants to hurt people. And he doesn't have the same human connection that you and I do to each other. You know how hard it would be for you to chop someone's finger off? A psychopath could do it. A sociopath would do it if you paid him. A psychopath would pay you to let him do it. You understand the difference there? And so I think we might have a guy here that is at least a sociopath, probably a psychopath. And he has now killed a New York Police Department officer and 3 other people. Now, this just happened last night. He went into a skyscraper carrying a note in his pocket with the grievance clearly directed at the NFL, said he suffered from CTE. He's a 27-year-old, grew up in California, was currently living in the Las Vegas area for a while, drove his car all the way to Park Avenue, went up in the office building and thought it was a good time to take the life of 4 of his fellow human beings. What's going on with this? Am I being naive? Am I being a little too Pollyannish? Or how worried are you about these psycho attacks? Because some of them are psycho attacks. Some of them are attacks that are coming from what doesn't seem to be like a psycho mentality, like psychopath, but just sort of a crazy, crazed mob mentality, like the Cincinnati Jazz Fest mob attacks. There was the crazy guy that went on the stabbing spree in Traverse City, Michigan over the weekend, stabbed 11 people. He got stopped by a good guy with a gun. We have the story of the hikers in Arkansas that were hiking with their 2 daughters. These 2 parents were. Some guy comes out and gets all stabby. Sounds like matches the psychopath. The 2 girls run away. They live. The parents die delaying the guy. We had the rash of trans shooters in the last couple years. The one in Colorado Springs, the one in Denver, the one in Aberdeen, the Nashville Christian School shooter, the Philly shooter, the shooter at Joel Osteen's church was a trans legal immigrant with Free Palestine written on the gun. What is going on? We've had the Free Palestine attacks where the 2 Jewish diplomats got shot outside the museum in D.C. We had the flame-throwing attack by a different guy. We had the Free Palestine activists running through people on Bourbon Street on New Year's Day in New Orleans. What is going on with this rash of seemingly just senseless psychopathic violence? And what do we do about it? How y'all doing? Did you play football? Did you get banged in the head quite a bit when you were growing up? I know I did. Are you a psycho killer now? Do you believe the motive of the guy who went and shot and killed 4 people last night in New York City? Let's get some insights from former NYPD Lieutenant Commander Joe Cardinale's back on the James Show. Welcome back on for the 1000th time. And as a guy who worked for the NYPD lost an officer yesterday. Your first reaction?
Well, my heart goes out to not only the NYPD officer, but everybody, all the families who lost somebody yesterday. And it's a double hurt for the NYPD. This was an officer that came on during a time that people were down on cops, and he chose to take the route anyways, has a young family, another one on the way. And now it's just another line of blue that we're going to have to set up for. And it's just another funeral, unnecessary funeral.
So we have the guy go in, kills 4 people, kills himself. There's a note, and it has a supposed motive, according to reports, that he blames the NFL for his brain injury. How does that fly with you? Does that seem legit, or is this a psychopath that's just trying to find an excuse for the violence he wanted to do anyway?
I'm trying to wrap my head around this, James. I have to be honest with you. I was up all night with this. We were doing shots all night long with this, and I have to understand: was he diagnosed with this? Was he officially diagnosed with the CTE?
Well, we know that's a no, because you can't be officially diagnosed until after you're dead and they saw your head open.
Okay, so there you go. So he's assuming he had it and everything.
Right.
And he's in the NFL, which he had nothing to do with other than an interview, I believe. All right, so I think his shot at the NFL, all right, was that he wasn't drafted into the NFL. All right, and he's blaming them for everything else that goes on in his life, and he decides to take it upon himself to just go ahead and create this carnage over here. Come to New York, 2,500 miles in about 36 hours. He's on what medication he's on is beyond me. I have no idea what medication he was on for this whatever he was diagnosed for psychologically. And that's the other question I have. If they already knew about his psychological problems in Las Vegas, at what point do you suspend that license and retrieve the weapons?
Yeah, I don't think there's really anything you can do until they do something illegal or something that either self-harm or harms somebody else. We don't have the minority report in America, nor do I think we want to. So this is, I think that's the troubling part for everybody. How do you stop this before they happen? I don't think you can.
Well, you can, and I'll tell you why. Because the whole thing with police officers is, their mental stability and everything is always in question, and people are always calling it in. So if an officer shows any signs of what this individual showed, all right, his weapons would be removed from him or her. All right, absolutely will happen 100%. All right, and then they send them for their evaluations and they put them under care and everything. That's been an ongoing thing for years with this. But yet, a licensed holder like this who has weapons and everything, nothing is called into question with that. I'm all for the Second Amendment. Everybody has the right to bear arms if they're qualified for it, if they're a qualified candidate for it. I'm all for it. Have your weapons, do what you want. Be that it is made with this whole situation with people that are unqualified, the criminals, the people that have mental illnesses and everything. They should not have firearms. So why would you not suspend this? Why wouldn't you suspend this license until you get an evaluation on the person? It's very simple. You revoke a license. You suspend it and pull the weapons in, put them in care until you see what's going on with this person. Because apparently he had a couple of episodes where it was brought to the police attention.
So, we're talking with Joe Cardinale, retired NYPD, former lieutenant commander over there. Well, let me give you a little pushback here, because I know we agree like 99% of the time. But in a situation, I don't want to break the precedent to where it's okay to go and confiscate someone's guns because someone else has deemed them as mentally incompetent. Because I see that very slippery slope be falling into, oh, look, Parker doesn't believe in climate change. He's mentally unfit. Let's go take his guns. And then we got to kick in the door of the Parker household, and it'll be almost immediately misused on a long enough timeline.
I don't think that was the case here. I think this was incidents that occurred where he told them these things. He's going under this, he's under stress. Who knows what happened at his job as a security officer over there? But at what point does that switch go off and he says, I'm making a trip to New York. I'm going to go 36 hours straight. I'm on a mission. And he was on a mission. If you look at that video, of that footage, that still shot of him walking in there with a stoic appearance on a mission with a gate going in there. And he must have went over it in his head a million times on the way over here in 36 hours, whatever it was, maybe 37 hours, 2,500 miles. This is what I'm going to do. And then he doesn't even get to the floor of the NFL because you need a card to get on that floor. So he gets in the elevator, lets that woman out, and he gets up to that floor and he creates carnage over there, probably on somebody that had nothing to do with anything he was portraying over here. If it is the NFL was his target. But it seems that it might have been, and hopefully we will get the answers for it.
Well, in so many of these instances, Joe Cardinale, the mass shooter keeps on going until a good guy with the gun shows up, whether it's a cop or a citizen who happens to be carrying. I would much rather that to be the lesson going away. What do you do about these random psychos? Before I would do anything with gun confiscation, I would say this is just a good sign that good citizens need to gun up and be that guy that gets there first to minimize the damage that these people can do.
Exactly. You want the guns in the hands of the people that can handle a gun, that deserve to have a gun. What I'm saying here is if you're showing signs of anything that he says he portrayed, all right, that he blames on everything, that he had this, he had that. But if this individual, I'm not saying take his guns forever. I'm saying until you find out what the status of this person is, all right, until you find out that this is a self-proclaimed, he's on medication for something, all right? If you're on medication for certain things, give you an example, and it has nothing to do with weapons. I have a CDL, all right? I drive, I can drive tractor trailers across this country. Now, because my blood pressure is a little high, and I take a little medicine for that, they will not give me a 2-year clearance on that. I have to go back every year for it. If you're on certain medications, you cannot be a permit holder for weapons, all right? You can on certain medications. And that's what I'd like to know. Was this medication one of those things that he shouldn't have a firearm? I'm not saying take them away from him permanently. I'm saying until you get a handle on what this individual is all about and why he's having these episodes, just suspend it. I'm not saying confiscate it, deny him, suspend it. You can always reinstate it. That's what I'm saying.
All right. Retired NYPD Lieutenant Commander Joe Cardinale. Sorry for the loss of one of your NYPD brothers, and thank you for being on the James Show again to help clear this up.
Anytime, my friend. You take care, all right?
All right. And look, I know, NYPD lost an officer, but DPD and FWPD and all the PDs around here, there's a sense of when you turn on the TV and you see one of your brethren, even though it's a distant cousin, that's something they have to go to work with on their mind, too. Just like if I went to work today and there was 4 talk show hosts that have been shot and killed, that might be something I think about, even if it didn't happen in our own backyard. But let's talk about that. What do you do to minimize this? I don't like that gun confiscation stuff at all. But let's talk about that. Where am I wrong? 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. I'll flesh out some of my solutions next on The James Show. News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM, WBAP. Hey, homeowners. James Parker here for Blue Ribbon Roofing. Have you gotten your free inspection yet? I know you've probably heard some commercials before that I've done for them, and you're like, that is a good idea. I probably should do that. And then you didn't do it. Well, don't put it off now. You shouldn't really put off anything that takes less than a minute to do. There shouldn't be a to-do list with things that take about 45 seconds. And all I'm telling you is go to blueribbondfw.com. There's a phone number up at the top, and you just give it a call and say, I want the free inspection. If someone's in the office, pick it up, they'll just go ahead and schedule it right there. Worst case scenario, you'll get a call back in a few minutes. But also, while you're there at blueribbondfw.com, check out some of the great 5-star reviews. There was another one from July 16th from Teresa. Blue Ribbon Roofing did an outstanding job replacing my very steep, huge roof. Arrived very early to beat the Texas heat and ended in the rain, never slowed. I could not be more pleased with their service. So go get your roof checked out. If there's something wrong with it, they'll try and get it fixed. If you need help with the insurance process, they can definitely help you with that. In a couple weeks, I want to be reading your 5-star review up here at blueribbondfw.com. But it starts with you getting a schedule of that free roof inspection. Go to blueribbondfw.com. We have a troubling shooting that happened in New York City last night. And where it happened is the only part of New York City that I'm really familiar with, this sort of Midtown Manhattan thing. I'm not a well-traveled guy. I'm just from the middle of nowhere, East Texas, crawled out of a log cabin one day. But when I was working at the satellite radio station, we had to go up there for work quite a bit. And I would stay in a hotel that's actually about 6 blocks from where the shooting is. It's called the Flat Hotel, if you must know. And I would walk down and go to the Sirius studios that were cat a corner from Radio City Music Hall. And it didn't dawn on me growing up as just some idiot from the middle of nowhere that all these places are right next to each other. I could take you on about a 10-minute walk in this neighborhood, and we could see the what's it called? The Edison Theater? No. Ed Sullivan Theater, where the Late Show was. Till Stephen Colbert ruined it. No, but that's a real place. Right across the street, if you turn around, it's the Bad Boy Entertainment building. The one with P. Diddy? Oh, yeah, I know. And then you just walk a few blocks, you're in Times Square where all those lights are. You go 2 blocks to the, I guess that would be east, and you're in the building where it's Fox News and the Wall Street Journal. One building up from that is where I worked. One building up and across is Radio City Music Hall. And behind that, they had the ice skating rink with the big Christmas tree. This is in that neighborhood. You go up a few more blocks and to the right 2 more blocks. And that's where this happened. And just in that little commute there, that little happy walk, You'd be going past the headquarters for ESPN, the headquarters for MSNBC, the headquarters for CNN, well, their New York studios. You would have seen all of that. You would have taken a right at St. Patrick's Cathedral, which shows up in so many movies and Opie and Anthony skits and things of that note. So this place is just landmark, headquarters, network, media outlet, something you've heard of, some movie company, it's an amazing place. And so it makes sense that the NFL's headquarters would be right there. But the motive for this is so suspect. It feels very unsatisfying, just like when you figured out what the motive is for the Idaho guy. I don't want to say his name, but the one that just got convicted for killing 4 seemingly random people. And they're just telling you, hey, he's a psychopath. Yep, sometimes psychopaths get triggered. Well, that's not good enough. I'd like a little more of an explanation. And we need an explanation so we can what? Avoid it, plan for it, keep ourselves safe, maybe arrange the rules in society to minimize something like this. But you can't confront something if you don't even know what it is. And so let's just go through the little help that we have here. Oh, it's just a psychopath, and he got his psychopathy turned onto the NFL because he was blaming being banged around in high school for his mental problems as an adult. All right, well, let's talk about big picture here. How do we minimize the psychos? Well, here's the bad news. There's very little you can do. Some psychopaths and sociopaths are created. Some people are born fairly normal with, the basic human empathy, the human connection that we all share, or most of us share. But if you completely traumatize a kid, especially repeatedly, over and over and over, you can create a sociopath. You can create a psychopath, or you can take someone that's a sociopath and turn them into psychopath. If someone's a sociopath and then you abuse them and cause them harm over and over and over as a child, that's the equilibrium they're going to seek out as an adult. And so we have some just fascinating statistics on where abuse comes from. We have some fascinating statistics on what does the best on raising kids to not be crazy people when they grow up or have these problems. Let me give you a couple of studies here. Children that are brought up in single mother homes versus their biological mother and father, 5 times more likely to commit suicide, 9 times more likely to drop out of high school, 10 times more likely to get addicted to drugs, 20 times more likely to end up in prison, 32 times more likely to run away from home. Fatherless boys are about twice as likely to have spent some time in jail before they reach the age of 30. And you see a lot of these shooters are angry, young, fatherless men. Columbine, Sandy Hook, Buffalo, Uvalde. There's sort of a pattern going on there. So, okay, how do you encourage family formation? How about more specifically with government policy? Because that's what we're all looking for. Is there anything we can do? Anything we need to change? Any laws? Well, look at what destroyed the family unit. A lot of people point at welfare. A lot of people point at the child support laws and custody laws that almost encourage divorce rather than make it a last resort. I think a big one that no one likes to talk about because it's not politically popular, ending Social Security. Ending Social Security, what good would that do? Well, grandma and grandpa would probably have to move in with one of their kids, and there will be a kid. It used to be the most normal thing in the world up until about the time you were born. When you were a kid, you very likely had one of your grandparents in the house, some of your grandparents in the house, maybe mom and dad's parents in the house. Do you think we'd have so many of these gender issues if grandpa's in the living room every time he walks by? What do you think happens if he walks by in eye makeup? You think he's going to be confronted? You think there's going to be some serious conversations to be had? And that's not abusive. That's your family taking care of you. And then the other solution is something you can do personally. Until we do get all this family restoration happening, until we do get more kids being born back in wedlock than out of wedlock in some societies, what do you do in the meantime with all the psychopaths and the crazy people and the criminals that are being created? Stay strapped or get clapped. That's all. You know how that works. You just don't want to do it. You don't want to have to. You want to live in a world that doesn't require that. You want to live in a world that's safe and good guys with guns are just an anachronistic, polite thing of the past. We're not there yet. We live among psychopaths. We live among evil men who are intent on committing violence. And the only thing that stops an evil man intent on committing violence is a good man who's better skilled at violence. So go get a gun, learn how to use it, be able to protect yourself and the people around you, just in the tiny 0.0001% chance you're ever in a situation like this. I know that's not a lot you can do, but that's all you can do on an individual level. So do it. A Texas sports legend had a interesting run-in with cancer. He seems to be taking it very well. But what does all this stuff mean? Deion Sanders had to deal with bladder cancer. This is what his doctor describes. My next guest is going to be a urologist that explains this in our language. But here it was at the press conference yesterday.
Or something we call very high risk non-muscle invasive bladder cancer. So we did discuss options. We discussed some options of treatment in the bladder, and we discussed bladder removal as well. Given his commitments to his family and to the team, elected to undergo a bladder removal. We performed a full robot-assisted laparoscopic bladder removal and creation of a new bladder. And I am pleased to report that the results from the surgery are that he is cured from the cancer.
All right, that's a lot of big words, but I heard cured in there, so that's generally a good thing. My next guest, Dr. Parth Shah, a urologist on The James Show. Explain to me what that means in regular language, the laparoscopic, robotic, whatever operation that he had.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks for having me on. And so in layman's terms, the surgeon made small incisions, used laparoscopic instruments, so with no big open cuts, and removed the bladder and took it out since the bladder had cancer in it. Now, in his condition, they were able to, harvest or use bowel to create a new bladder. And essentially, I think describing it that way sometimes leads to some misunderstandings. We're just creating a big chamber that urine can sit and pool inside of, and then he can urinate as normally as possible the usual way. So that's essentially what he had done.
So they made a new bladder out of part of his colon. That sounds so gross.
Yeah, it's the small intestine, but yes, certainly the bowel can be repurposed for other functions, and we borrow it to serve as a storage unit for urine. So, we don't have to rely on urinary bags or ostomy devices, et cetera, to control urination.
So Dr. Shah, he now has to run around with a bag, so he can't control his flow, his start and stop?
No, actually for him, because he's so fit, healthy, and what he's done for his career, he can actually urinate normally like you and I. He just wouldn't get the usual sensations like, hey, I got to go pee. It'll be mostly based on timing. So he'll have to say, gosh, it's been a few hours. My pot is probably getting full, so I should go urinate before I leak on myself.
Oh, so since they took his bladder out, he doesn't know when he has to go.
Exactly. Those nerves, everything that are, urination, it's a little bit more complicated than we all want to give it credit for. And so when the bladder gets removed, the nerve responses get interrupted. So your body doesn't tell anymore. So you never get that feeling. So yes, it's like toileting again. You got to set a time and say, let's go urinate before I leak on myself.
So how did this get detected in him? He said he was going to get scanned for something else and they accidentally found this. How do you find bladder cancer?
Yeah, so bladder cancer is actually, it's the 10th one of the top 10 cancers that we deal with here in the States. About 80,000 new diagnoses get made every year. Again, not a huge number, but that's a lot of folks dealing with this. And normally there's a lot of symptoms that overlap with bladder cancer that men and women normally deal with as I call it maturation, as we age. So sometimes you have urinary changes, frequency, urgency. But the biggest symptom that we got to look out for is blood in the urine. So anytime you see red when you urinate, that's not normal, and that needs to be worked up. And occasionally you go to see your doctor and they say, hey, you have microscopic blood in the urine. So you're like, well, I can't see blood. I guess it's under the microscope. No big deal. Well, it kind of is because, again, blood in the urine is a big risk factor for having bladder cancer. So those are really the kind of the symptoms to look out for. Blood in the urine and occasionally a lot of peeing too much or urinary frequency, like we like to say.
Dr. Parth Shah, it almost bothers me how attached emotionally I am to this guy. Just tell me, is Deion Sanders going to be okay?
It seems like from his doctor report, it seemed to be confined to the bladder. And so those folks at 5 years, there's a 96 to 97% survival rate. So again, this is one of those things where we try not to be hokey about it, but early diagnosis and treatment leads to better cure rates. So I think Deion's going to be around for the future, and I think he's enacted timely with appropriate screening and catching it early.
All right, Dr. Parshaw, thank you very much. We hadn't needed a urologist on the show before, but I'm glad we got you now.
Well, I appreciate it. And, more reasons for guys especially to go get screened for regular kind of health screenings with a primary care doctor. That's the most common way we detect these issues. I know nobody wants to talk about these things and we want to just deal with it in silence, but Deion coming to light with this and being so vocal and open about it and taking the stigma away, I think that's great. And we gotta be around for our families, and that starts with us.
Exactly. That was his takeaway from the press conference yesterday, man. If you have any doubts, go get yourself checked out. And if you've never been checked out before and you are getting mature, as Dr. Parshaw said, go get checked out. Coming up next on the James Show, the economy's doing so good. How good is it? Bill Maher had to admit he was wrong on tariffs in the economy. And it'll kind of make you feel better to hear someone actually be contrite for 5 seconds in the media. That's next on the James Show. News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP.
The James Show Podcast.